There are far better shapers than me. There's 1,000 better shapers than me around. I've never been super good with the tools, you know. I've got better as I got older, and I can swing an electric planer around quite well. But, you know, if I was to go start building a house, the chippies would sack me pretty quick. So, no, I'm definitely a designer. In surfboard design, there are 50 or 100 possible elements, and they're all floating around in the ether. And when you do a custom board, you've got to pull those elements down and put them into the foam. And that's what I love doing. And I love the big changes, not just little tiny micro modifications. They bore me. So I like big changes in a board, in surfboard design.
I had a conversation with Bob in the 90s. He was right there with me. I was going, yeah, I came off the bottom and then I just hooked it right in. And as I was explaining it, he was just going. I'll never forget his face. I was like, I was thinking about it, I was like, he's right there with me on the way. He's off the bottom with me. He's under the lip with me. He's traveling through that tube with me. He's right there, and he was just like, he was just getting it. And I was like, oh man.
Oh yeah. He's like, he doesn't stop. Well, he's had 2 knees, 2 hips. So he's like the little bionic man, you know. He just keeps on charging around. Loves the surf. Yeah, he's an inspiration, really.
He's just not cynical. He doesn't. It's not like, oh, I was better in the 60s. It's too crowded now. It just doesn't think that way. It's all future and it's all positivity, and I think that's why it's such an attractive person. People end up just falling off every word he says.
My fascination with surfboards started from the moment that I could paddle out past the break, past the body surfing break, and be out to sea and be able to choose the swell I wanted. And then the first time I stood up and took a drop planing down the surface, I went, this is it, I'm doing this forever. One night in Brisbane, my dad took me around to visit a guy who was doing repairs on 16-foot clubby boards, the 16-foot plywood boards. And I walked under his house and he had racks of them, all varnished, and these beautiful forms, you know, these big wooden 16-foot forms. And I was probably 12 or 13. And Dad went, oh man, this guy makes these things? This is what I want to do. This is what I've got to do. I've got to get into making these things. So that got me from age 13. I hitchhiked to Sydney and walked into Reg McDonough's surfboard factory, which is where Ingham Hall is now. And he said, can you shape? I said, yeah, you bet I can. So he gave me a flaming vibrator sander and a blank. He said, go to it. And me, like a mug, I'm trying to push this vibrator sander on the blank, doing nothing. And he came out joking and said, I don't think you're a shaper. No, I'm not. So I walked around to Scotty Dillon's, got myself a job as a sander. So at 17, in 1961, I started sanding. And within 6 months I was a shaper. We'd always down tools whenever the swell was up. Come on, we're all going surfing. We'd shut the shop and go surfing. We were making, this is no, serious, 24 boards a day. It was fierce. Everyone wanted to get onto this surfing craze. And then Midget won the world contest in '64. The whole thing just kept rolling. Australia's the chest beating, we're the heroes of this sport, you know.
While everyone was headed towards longer boards, McTavish was quietly building shorter, more manoeuvrable ones. The McTavish plastic machine is a product of Bob's dedication to performance. It brings the surfer closer than ever before to the full expression of his personality.
In '67, when the shortboard revolution commenced, it was Midget and I were, he was working at Palm Beach and I was working in Brookvale, and in the afternoons I'd drive out to have a surf, wash off the foam dust and resin at Palm Beach or Avalon, and Midget would be there on his latest and I'd have my latest, and we basically in 6 months we went from 9'6" down to 7'6", and that was the biggest change ever. But The hardest part was throwing away the slavery to the Californian lead, because all the American surf magazines were teaching us the style and how it went and the technique. So, and all the stars, from Phil Edwards through Nicky Dora, they were setting the template for performance.
Skip, Mickey, and McTavish got together. We were going back to the States in the morning, and McTavish wanted to make sure that we fully understood the new concepts before we left.
Well, yeah, the whole idea of that board was, as you said, was to increase manoeuvrability while still maintaining speed from an old board. The idea of increasing manoeuvrability means you can get into positions that you can get more speed. So overall you're going to get more from the wave. Many things.
Fitting the board into the wave and getting it.
Yeah, by manoeuvrability.
Yeah.
By having really good manoeuvrability, you can place it in more advantageous spots. You see a power pocket sitting up on the top of the wave and you say, I've got to get up there and get that power. You just go, sit up in there and
Choose your own track.
Yeah,
sure, pick your own track.
He really pushed the generation at the time, and really, it was, he was involved, like cutting things up and shaving things off, and then, reorganising, and just really involved from the get-go, really. And I can feel his spirit today when I get to talk with him one-on-one. He's just so alive, and I can't imagine the kind of person he was back in the day.
We were making boards for where we were surfing, especially the involvement school at Noosa, and that reflected down through the rest of the Australian industry. So guys in Bondi were riding our Noosa design boards, which is technically not spot on. But we didn't know any better, really. The customers didn't know any better. But us guys at Noosa were refining this thing and getting it tweakier and responding quickly. We had open, empty point waves to develop the shortboard on. So from 68 to 71, just the hottest period of design.
Really contemporary today. He's still catering to a broader community of surfers who love riding stylish, beautiful pieces of equipment.
Hey Mick, good to see you, champ.
You too, mate.
Good, bud.
How
Real
things,
good, real good, yeah.
Awesome, looking well.
Yeah, for an old fart.
Oh, mate.
Two
I'm
hips
looking
and
that
two
good.
knees.
Yeah.
But still surfing.
Yeah. Always.
Regularly, yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I was just showing the crazy board I was riding. This is this was 1967. We made the plastic machine.
Oh yeah. I remember you telling me this whole story.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, this one works.
No way. You finally figured it out.
Yeah, it took 50 years, but we got it right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Making a board for Mick's going to be really exciting because you've got one of the world's greatest surfers, but he's got a full back foot style, used to driving off 3 fins and double concos. So he can blast out of the pocket and put himself up into the slot, like no one else. Come from behind tons of white water and blast through, and he uses that back foot and the tail so well. Whereas the board I'm going to make him is a classic 70s, which was pretty gutless in the tail, and the speed came from flow down the line, and you had to use the back of the board to position yourself in the slot, then shuffle forward to get the speed from the wider nose area. So it's totally different from what Mick surfed before, but what a fascinating combination. I usually cut just outside the line, on it, but on the outside of it. Just gives you enough time to just do a little bit of work on it. But when Brewer was shaping these, I was in his shaping room in Hawaii, and he cut them out like a ½ inch, like almost a centimetre oversized.
Yeah, right.
And you get the electric plane and he'd plane it back.
Yeah.
And went, blow that.
Yeah.
Cut on the line.
Work.
Yeah. That shape has been really closely identified with me through my career of 60 years. That was a big highlight in the 70s, getting the first commercially successful shortboard into the marketplace, and it's worked for so many people. So many good surfers learnt on that board back in the 70s. There's no board like it on a modern realm, that can get away with a rail that solid.
It's crazy, isn't it?
A flat deck, so there's 3 inches of foam right there,
Yeah, it's sort of something that's sort of starting to come back a little bit more, where everyone's going real thick up front and blading out the tail.
Wow.
Yeah, especially like the guys like paddling jaws and stuff like that.
Oh, jaws, yeah, big
Yeah.
waves, yeah. No, I'm a full believer in meat up front for me.
Yeah.
I think the trouble is with jaws, they don't use enough tail rocker.
Yeah, right.
He kind of was always on about getting rocker right, especially tail rocker. And he was like, don't worry too much about the front, it's all in the back, that's the part that fits in the water. So concentrate on your tail rocker, and that's the part that's fitting in the curve.
Surfboards are amazing little vessels that are travelling in increasing spirals. And so to develop the wings, the fins, and the foils and the rockers and the bottom shapes to work in those tight curves is really a wonderful dynamic of design. And it's constantly intriguing and you're constantly learning. Even at my age, there's still new stuff. Okay, mate, have a feel of this. So pure 72.
That is incredible.
I love shaping the board for Mick because he's Mick and he's no longer under the stress of competition. So he's now relaxed and his mind can wander where he likes with surfing.
Thank you so much. I'm
Stoked, bud.
Oh, thanks.
Champ.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Now
But no, don't worry about that. I'll just take it home and put it in a cup.
I've got my eye on the highway. I've got my boat set to sail. I've got my feet in the water and it's cold. I've got my hammer on the nail. When I was a boy in New York City, I thought I'd ride the world with my thumb. The drinks would be cold, the girls pretty. I'd play a tune that everyone could hum. From debutantes to laborers and bums.
I surf 2 or 3 times a week. I'm onto the pulse of what's going on at all the breaks. I'm not addicted the way I used to be. Up until the 80s, I was a full surf addict and I had to get wet constantly. I was kind of forced not to. I had to make a living, but I still love it. But I still take experimental boards in the water. Every time I go out, I'm riding something with a variation. And that's the way it is.
Bob's had an enormous influence on the surfboard design, riding his own equipment and then shaping boards for everyone else. And it's a fantastic pick.
What he did and what he's still doing, and still checking the waves every day and into it. And that's why I picked him. I thought he's still in the room. He's still going back there going, I got a new idea, and I love that.
I love surfboards, I love surfing, I love the shapes, I love the dynamics of surfboards going through the water. Every board I shape, I still visualise the board in the water. And that's what keeps you going, is you're surfing in your mind when you're shaping. Someone once said, there's soul in some surfboards, and I go, there's no such thing. But now I see where the soul is. It's when the shaper is visualising the board passing through the water. I'm pleased to be recognised as a legend long-time shaper. That's good. After doing it for 60 years, you just do it because you love it. It doesn't matter really what accolades you get or what you don't. It doesn't matter. You're here still the next day shaping, and it just goes on and on.